This tutorial we're going to cover lighting and setting up the Arnold Render window so we can preview texture maps and final renders. I'm going to start by introducing a light into my environment. I'll hold down the space bar, I'll go to Create, I'm going to choose a spotlight, and I'm going to hit 4 on the keyboard. When we introduce lights, they go directly to the center of the viewport at the XYZ axes. I'm going to move my light icon above my content, and if I were to hit T on the keyboard, it breaks the light into two icons. The target, which is the vertices with a box, and then the cone shape is where the light is radiating from. So I'm going to click and drag the target area down to where I would like the light to shine. Now if I wanted to, I could hold X on the keyboard and the target area, previously a box, turns into a circle. Now I can shift and snap that to the center of my viewport. I'm going to put the light in a position like so, and then I'm going to go to Arnold Render View. And in the Arnold Render View, I'm going to click on the little red triangle in the upper right hand corner. Now, I'm not seeing anything inside my viewport, and that means I need to go and adjust the lighting. So I'm going to go to the right hand side of the interface, and you should see the attribute editor for the light if it is selected. In there, you would click on Spotlight Shape, and it'll give you the tab with the physical representations of the light. I'm going to start by increasing the intensity. I'll bring it all the way to 10. And then I'm going to go further down, open up the Arnold tab, and I'm going to bump up the exposure, and I'll start to see my lighting now. Now I'm going to put the exposure at about 3.5, because then I can go up and I can change the intensity. The intensity doesn't max out at 10. I could go in and put 20 or 100 or 1,000 if I chose. So between the exposure under Arnold and the intensity of the light, I can pretty much get what I want as far as the brightness of that light. Now with the Arnold renderer, if I was to go to Window and choose 3D Manipulator, I can then use the Arnold window and my Option key in my mouse as if I were in my viewport. The viewport itself, there was much more responsive for zooming in and out on. Now if I look at my model here, the lighting isn't really encompassing all the geometry of the model itself. So again, in the attribute editor on the right, I'm going to change the cone angle. I'll increase it, and you can see it's added more light to the room. So by changing the cone angle and or raising it up inside the interior, I can now increase the scope of the light. I'm going to make the cone angle a little bit bigger, and then below cone angle is the word penumbra angle, and what that means is that if I would drag that right or left, it softens the edge of that light so it looks a little bit more natural in the context of an interior like a room. The lighting for each interior is subjective, so you'll find yourself adjusting the intensity as well as the exposure in the attributes for the light. And once again, if the light is selected, the attributes for the light will show up on the right hand side. If in the event you do not see it, you can click on the little poly faces below the lock in the upper right hand corner of the interface, and it'll take you through the attribute editor and channels window. Now we're going to set the transparency of the lampshade as well as the leaves on our plant. I'm going to start with the lampshade. I'm going to select the lampshade, and I'm going to right click and choose Material Attribute. In the Material Attribute, I'm going to open up Geometry, and when you open up the Geometry tab, you'll see Opacity. The darker in value that is, the more transparency that we'll have. Now, nothing will happen initially. I'm going to drag it about halfway back towards the word opacity. Now I'm going to select the lampshade once again. And when I do, I see the geometry represented. And I'm looking for the surface shape, whether it's lofted or polygon or planar. You'll see surface shape. And in the surface shape tab, I'm going to go down to Arnold. And I'm simply going to click off on opaque. And when you do, you'll see in your render view now, based on the adjustment that we made originally to the texture node, the transparency will be reflected. And that was going to geometry, and under opacity, changing the opacity of the slider.